Hey guys, welcome back to Pharaoh Iron and Customs. I was going to start out by saying it's been an extraordinarily busy week. I was going to start doing something to the Ford today. I haven't touched it since I have to look back at the videos to see the last time I worked on it, but it's been since before the beginning of the summer. I had a question on one of my videos, or a reply that said I should, it was on the where I started the Chevrolet truck video. If you haven't seen that, I'll add a link down in the comments. But that truck, they had asked to show the starting procedure. That truck is not a good video to get an idea about how to start a vehicle, a carbureted vehicle. It's still got some issues with the tuning. It's got a huge camshaft in it. I mean, way too big. Like, 20-something-year-old Michael thought it was a really great idea. 48-year-old Michael would not dare, do the things I did with that motor and attempt to build a streetable vehicle. So it was talking about starting a carbureted vehicle. And I have a couple of carburetors here. This one I just pulled off of the 8BA over in the corner. It is, I think it's an EAB. Let's see. No, it's I can't read what it's, ECW. But this is a 94 Holley. This is pretty much after Ford stopped using the Stromberg. This is pretty much your standard carburetor that was on the flatheads in the late 40s, or whenever the Stromberg went away. It is a 2-barrel carburetor. I've seen people at car shows mistaking it for a 1-barrel because, it looks like a 1-barrel, but it is actually a small 2-barrel carburetor. And so far as starting an old car with a choke on it, you'd pull the choke on and might, hit the accelerator pump 1 or 2 times. And this comes down to knowing your car. Once or twice you hit the accelerator pump, hit the accelerator, and this one, the pump is starting to stick on it a little bit. It was working pretty good, but it's going to have to be rebuilt. But what happens is when the car starts, it'll actually open this valve in the top of the carburetor, which lets air through. And then you may have to start letting the choke open a little bit, and this is controlled with a knob on the dash, until your car gets warm enough that it can run without choke. Now, on a more modern carburetor, and I didn't get the right screwdriver, you will have an automatic choke. There are a couple of different kinds of ways that those work. This is actually basically it's basically a 94 Holley. It's a 2110 Holley, aka a bug spray, and this is the big bug spray that you would run on a highly modified Volkswagen engine. I actually have a setup to put 2 of these on a Volkswagen engine, and it's very much overkill. So you can see it's got the choke pretty much the same way. This one's set really wrong. Either that or something is wrong with the spring inside of it. But what you would do on this, and maybe this was the wrong one to get because it doesn't look like it's got all the linkage on this one, but I can kind of show you how it works. In the morning, you'd get up and you'd hit the accelerator on it, and when you hit the accelerator on it, you'll see that right here there's a cam that is supposed to be a linkage that runs from here to here. And what would happen is you kick the accelerator and it will allow the bimetal spring inside the choke pull off would be cold and it'll pull the choke shut. So then the engine would start up, and this one is electric. Some of them use heat crossover. Like on a Chevy, you'd have a pipe that goes in the manifold that would come up, and it may also have an electric choke and a heat operated choke that runs through that heat riser that runs through the top of the manifold. And as this gets warm, it starts pulling the, I'm going the wrong way, nope, I was going the right way, starts pulling the choke off, and you know, you have different detents on that cam that allow the idle, like you'll hear somebody start up a car and it'll be idled up, they'll kick it and it'll drop down, and they'll kick it again and it'll drop down some more. So and basically, like I said, this is a bimetal spring, and when one side gets hot, it pulls the other side around and it'll open the choke. Now, so far as starting a vehicle, this goes into tuning of a carbureted vehicle. Okay, now, if you have a later model car that has a automatic choke on it, it comes into tune, it gets back to tuning. Your carburetor tune needs to be, you need to get the car started, warmed up, set your idle mixture on it, and you can use a vacuum gauge to set your idle mixture. It's a good spot to start about. Screw the screws in one all the way in, and then like you'd screw them in, and you don't want to jam them in there because you don't want to mess up the screw, but you screw them in like till they touch. Then you go, that's one turn, 1.5, maybe 2 turns. That's a good spot to start with your idle mixture. Get the car running, and you'd find intake manifold vacuum, and I'm not sure if this port looks like it may come to manifold vacuum, but you put a vacuum gauge on it, and you start adjusting one side out until the vacuum starts coming up, and when you see it start dropping again, then you turn it just back in until you get the vacuum to the highest point, and then you go to the other side and do the same thing. And that should give you your, I mean, at operating temperature, if you're supposed to run at 180 degrees, you know, that's how you want your idle set. All right, well, you get that set, and then you probably, most of the carburetor kits I've ever seen told you, if you look at this one, it'll tell, it's got a mark. I don't see the mark on the, that's not right. I'm not sure if the mark is on the, I don't see it on the automatic choke, but there should be a mark on the automatic choke, and you have, I don't know if y'all can see that, several lines right there, and you'd start in the neutral position. And if you kick the throttle twice, fire up the car, and if it runs okay, then your choke is set right. You know, and then you kick it, and as it warms up, it drops the idle down. You can take and turn, you can turn it backwards to make the choke come off faster, or turn it forwards to make the choke stay on longer. And you know, this is just very, very, very basic. You know, and we'll get into that because I'm going to set up on the Ford. I've got, I don't know if you can see it on the wall back there, it's probably not in the shot. I have a two barrel intake that's going to go on the flathead, and I'm going to set it up on a progressive linkage. So we'll get into setting up carburetors when we get the Ford running. I'm maybe going to pull the Volkswagen in later this year, early next year. I want to get the Volkswagen in when I get the floor put back in the Ford. And do some work to it. I'd really love to get some videos of the Volkswagen up on the channel. I'd really love to get it running just where I can, even if it's just driving around the yard and mess with it. So like I said, we'll get more into tuning when we get to the point where we're tuning something with a carburetor on it. And you know, this channel's not really a will it run channel. I mean, I got a few projects. I've got an 86 Ranger out there that we've got to get running. It's fuel injected, so I mean, you know, it's not going to be any, you know, carbureted stuff for any interesting carburetors or whatever. But like I said, there's 3 carbureted vehicles here. The Ford is carbureted, the Volkswagen's going to be carbureted, the Chevy truck's carbureted, and of course the John Deere's a gas tractor and it's carbureted, but it doesn't, you know, tractor carburetors don't work like car carburetors. They don't have accelerator pumps and all that in them. So anyway, I think that was all I was going to talk about. There's actually a lot of setting up for a carburetor for an engine that's not factory carburetor. You have in this carburetor, you can't see the power valve is underneath here, but you know, you can get different size power valves, different size squirters, different jets, of course. You know, all of that gets into tuning. But when it comes down to it, if you've got a stock engine and starting a stock engine, it's just, if your carburetor's set right, you pump the gas twice, it should fire up, and you know, the choke should pull off by itself if it's got an automatic choke. If it doesn't have an automatic choke, it's just something you got to learn you got to mess with until you figure it out. The Chevy, when I was a kid driving it to school every day, it had a 600 Holley on it, vacuum secondaries, and with a mechanical choke. You never hit the choke on it. If you hit the choke, it will flood the truck out. But it also had, you know, it had a smaller cam than it has now, so that plays into it. You know, what your manifold vacuum is, how much compression you have, how big the cam is, you know, what the shape of the heads and the intakes, that all plays into the tuning of the carburetor. That's why you end up tuning a carburetor. But like I said, if it comes down to a factory motor, it should be kicked the gas twice, unless it's an old school that has a manual choke on it. Hit the gas twice, it should fire up, and if the choke's working right, it's going to pull off and it's going to run. And if it's not doing that, then you need to get into tuning the carburetor, or, you know, repairing the carburetor, or whatever, you know, or maybe ignition system, or, you know, maybe you've got engine problems. So like I said, we're going to get more into carburetors further down the line, and we appreciate you watching. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.